I think one of the major things that I want them to see in me is kindness. I don't care if they see me as a successful businesswoman, because at the end of the day, that's not the most important piece of my life. Being compassionate and kind, caring about people, being gracious with mistakes, like that's the things that I want them to see and to walk away with. Hopefully a long time off. But when I'm dead and gone and my kids are talking memories, I want them to be like, oh, my mom was so kind. She always helped people. She was always willing to do things. She loved us. That's what I think is the important thing through all of this. So, it's great to be known as a strong leader or as a good business person. But at the end of the day, I think the character piece of it is more important to me than any of the material things that come along with, leadership.
In this episode, I talk with Caity Liggon, a director of billing at Assembly Health. Caity talks about how a part-time job she took in high school to help her mom at New Bedford, a job she swore she'd never do again, has become a rewarding and fast-growing career at Assembly Health. As a mom and an everyday hero, she also provides incredible wisdom about the importance of developing your people as you scale your own leadership and impact. Welcome, Caity, and congratulations for being named an everyday hero.
Thank you.
Before we get started, do you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself, things we can't find on LinkedIn that are a part of your story, family, pets, hobbies, interesting facts, anything like that?
Yeah. So I am married, or actually coming up on our 9-year anniversary next month. We have 2 children, a 5-year-old son and a almost 3-year-old daughter. They keep us busy. They're great kids. I love being a mom. And then my hobby is actually, we have chickens. So we take care of our chickens and collect fresh eggs. And that's been interesting and fun to kind of learn more about all of the different kinds of chickens there are.
I bet your kids enjoy that as well.
My son really likes them. He is really into Jurassic World, so he treats them like velociraptors.
I love it.
But my daughter's terrified. But they're probably a little more than half her size because she's so little. So I could see why that would be a little terrifying.
And if they're velociraptors, she's treating them the same way. She just does. She has a different reaction, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So in terms of work, will you just share what you do and where you do it?
So I manage our billing department at New Bedford, who is partnered with Assembly now. And so I just make sure our day-to-day runs, that we're getting claims out to insurance companies on time, and just ensure that our providers are getting reimbursed for their services.
How would you describe for anybody listening what it is that New Bedford does, and then sort of how that fits under what Assembly does?
So New Bedford is a medical billing company. We handle coding, authorizations, billing, credentialing, kind of the full scope of revenue cycle management. And how that fits into Assembly. Assembly, I know, started in the SNF kind of side of things and have expanded to physician group billing. And so we handle billing for different physician groups, primarily radiation oncology and behavioral health.
How did you get started in this work in the first place? How did you find New Bedford and get involved in revenue cycle management?
So I actually started right after high school. So I graduated high school and I think I started like a week later. My mom is actually one of the old partners. So she had asked me to kind of work part-time to help with a cleanup project for one of the physician groups that had been bought out by a hospital. So we were just kind of working through their AR and credits. And so that whole summer I was working 40 hours a week sitting at a desk for the first time in my life, because before that I was waiting tables and working at daycares and, the typical high school student jobs. And so I remember I got through that summer and I was like, I'm literally never doing this again. But
back to babysitting. I want to get out of this.
Clearly that is not what happened. I ended up staying on part-time through college because New Bedford was really flexible with my schedule, which was nice in college because, classes kind of get scheduled when they get scheduled. And so once I graduated, I started full-time, and I've kind of worked through all of the different roles and positions at New Bedford. So I've touched a little bit of everything. And I think, having that exposure to all of the different pieces definitely allowed me to learn and grow a lot. And I think it's one of the reasons I've been able to continue to be successful in my role.
So you had that first experience and you're like, I'm never doing this again. And then you managed to not only do it again, but go to school while doing some of it, and then finish school and then come in full time doing it. How did your mom talk you into that? Or what was it that made that unfold that way?
I don't know that she necessarily talked me into it. I remember one of our conversations before I started was her telling me that I better not give her a reason to fire me and that she absolutely would fire me if I screwed anything up. So
No pressure.
yeah. So she definitely didn't make it easy in a good way, though. She had extremely high expectations of me throughout the whole process, honestly, but that just made me, I think, a better employee. I think the flexibility at the time working through school was a big factor for me because I could work, 10 hours one semester. And then if I needed to bump it up to 20, I could. And they just let me kind of work when I needed to. And then as I continued to work through college, I realized that I was good at what I was doing. And then I kind of started to get into other aspects of it. So I was training and then kind of leading a team here and there. And that piece of it, I think, is what really kind of grabbed my hold in the company because I love working with people. I think some of this kind of goes just to the background. I originally went to school for psychology. So I actually have my bachelor's in psychology. I thought I would go into counseling or social work or something. Turned out that wasn't exactly where I found myself, but I think some of that initial interest in helping people kind of carried over into the role. So when I graduated from college, I started full-time and I was working in kind of a trainer capacity because we were growing and bringing in new people and we really didn't have a dedicated team member at the time to training. And I think in any company, training is such an important piece of it that if it's not done well, it kind of sets people up for failure from the start. And so we kind of put emphasis on that when we were going through that growth period. And that was kind of initially my interest in helping people. I was like, okay, this is great. I can train people. I can help them be successful, get started, feel comfortable in the position. And then because I had kind of touched different aspects of the company, so I had worked in coding for a little bit. I had kind of handled all of the different billing processes. They promoted me to a team lead position over what we had called our small practice team, which was a few of our kind of outlier specialties that had one or two physicians or providers. So it was a pretty small team to start with. I think I had maybe 2 employees under me. But again, kind of that like being able to help them succeed and seeing the progress with the client's stats and financials was one of the rewarding parts of the job. And so from there, we kind of restructured a little bit and had additional management roles. And I moved into a supervisor position where I was managing, I think, a team of 8. And it was actually when I was prepping for my maternity leave for my son, I had 2 team leads under me and I was trying to get them ready to kind of cover my work while I was out on maternity leave. And seeing them grow and seeing them be successful in covering some of those roles was really awesome. And it was encouraging, because when you get to see people grow and get excited about what they're learning, and I don't know, that's just kind of, I love it. So.
Jason Farrell has worked with Caity since 2012. In fact, Jason's dad started New Bedford, which is now a part of Assembly Health. So he's known Caity since those early days. And ironically, he too started just to help his dad out. And 17 years later, here he is. I asked Jason what made Caity Liggon an everyday hero.
I think if you work with her for any amount of time, I think it's pretty easy to see what makes her an everyday hero is really just that she leads by example. Very hard worker. She has very high expectations for herself as well as others. But she also has this understanding that people don't just automatically perform at their top level, that her teams need to be coached, need to be developed through feedback and educational opportunities in order to succeed. I think she's always been big on team culture and kind of bringing the team together, making sure people knew each other, had a relationship, but wanted to always take that a step further and just provide different staff other educational opportunities, whether it be directly related to their customer, their specialty, their system, or the type of work they're doing, whether it's billing or coding or some other type of service, or just general management training, like Franklin Covey courses, giving team access to management training opportunities that wouldn't otherwise have been available.
So for anybody listening, what does that look like for her in practice? What does that look like for your other team members in practice?
Yeah, I think probably one large example that comes to mind is a few years back, our company switched claims clearinghouses, which is no small feat and took a ton of work. But Caity really led the effort there to take charge, take the training, take the lead over that transition. And it really required redesigning all of our accounts receivable workflows, a lot of other processes related to payment posting and just triage of denials. And she consistently met with her team, her account managers, provided them training opportunities, developed KPIs and trackers for tracking performance, implemented standards for performance, as well as quality auditing programs that was able to give team feedback, let them know where they stood with their accuracy, but also as well as their production rates. And like I mentioned about the general management training opportunities, she would train her account managers directly on the subject matter and customers, the specialties they were working in, but also provided them that external management training that allowed them to just be better equipped to handle future issues.
It's clear Caity knows how to get stuff done. But more importantly, she knows how to get stuff done with and through others in a way that's beneficial to everyone. And Caity has seen a lot of change in her time, from the early days to growth stage for New Bedford through their partnership with Assembly, and now as part of a fast-growing private equity-backed business. Caity's navigated a lot and helped others do the same. Here, she offers a mini masterclass in leading change. Can you just talk a little bit about your experience of being with the company for as long as you've been with the company, going through the transitions you've gone through, joining with Assembly and those kinds of things? Just some of that journey from a professional perspective that you've been on?
So I think as far as like going through a lot of the growth before Assembly, when you start out with such a small company, there's definitely growing pains and learning how to work with higher volumes of, just influx, managing additional employees. We went through the offshoring process, some system changes, and through all of that, I think just being flexible and also being a change agent, like encouraging the team to embrace the change, reassuring them through the changes was an important piece. One of the major changes we went through was when we offshored work. And I know anytime a company offshores work, there's always fear of losing jobs. And so we just really worked to reassure the team that the purpose of offshoring was not to eliminate positions. It was to be able to continue to take on additional work. And so we were able to kind of prove that through time, just because we didn't eliminate people's positions. And so we navigated that with just, continuing to encourage them, being transparent, answering questions, but also, having extreme flexibility, because anytime you make changes like that, things don't always go according to plan. And so one of the other big changes that professionally we went through was when we changed clearinghouse systems. So, anytime there's a system change, there's so many pieces that you have to watch, and getting, staff on board is a process too, because you're used to doing things one way. And so again, we were just very transparent. We encouraged flexibility. We opened up the conversation for feedback from the staff on processes, and, just really encourage like that open communication so that we could continue to hear them and take their recommendations into consideration and kind of figure out best processes with the new system. And I think some of those changes really prepped us for the transition to Assembly. They had already gone through some significant changes, and we've had a lot of staff that have been with New Bedford for years. Like, I am one of quite a few that have been here for as long as I have. I think there's 5 or 6 others that have been here longer than me. So, they've all been through that too. And I think having that longevity here encouraged some of our newer team members to like stick through the changes, because they could see that they would pay off. And then of course the transition to Assembly, I think, made people a little bit nervous, because you never know when you're, new management, new processes. But we continue to just be encouraging. Everything that Assembly stands for was basically the same values that New Bedford already had. And Assembly really did continue to like kind of stick with their word. There wasn't any change ups. What they said, they meant. And so we just continued to reiterate that with the staff. We trust the original partners. So when we heard they were making this decision, we trusted their judgment. And I think because there was that trust with the partners, that has kind of lended itself to Assembly as well. But they really have been great. They answered questions. They took the time to call our team members that had concerns. They made it easy for us to continue to encourage our staff and to kind of back the change with them.
It's fascinating listening to you. I could listen to you talk about it all day because change is so relevant and so present in all of our companies that are all growing, whether it's technology or new processes or integration or new markets or new products. And, I was just taking notes. You mentioned really proactive communication, being open to feedback and questions, being transparent, being flexible. You described that with New Bedford through all of the changes you went through, but then you kind of came back in Assembly, sort of approached partnering with New Bedford with the same spirit and same ideas, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of a masterclass in managing change because those fears and those concerns about the unknown are just very real for people.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I want to read a statement from your Everyday Hero nomination and just have you talk through it a little bit. It says, through Caity's efforts on developing her account manager skills and improved workflows, New Bedford's denials have decreased and our workflow has become more efficient. Our collection percent has increased on several clients over the past 5 years, and the outstanding AR has decreased for many of our clients. I mean, it's a pretty huge impact materially to the business, right? And I'm just curious, as you think about how you've already talked about developing your people, as you think about that kind of impact on the business, what are some leadership lessons you've learned through your evolution with the company and in your roles that our audience would love to learn from?
I think one of the biggest lessons is that I am only as successful as my team is. So if my team isn't performing well, I'm not performing well. So, at the end of the day, I am accountable for the work being done, but that starts at building my team up. So I think taking the time to really develop the people that work under you is so important because as a human being, people only have so much capacity. You're going to hit a point where you can't do it all. And if you don't have a team under you that can step up to the plate, then you've limited the entire company's growth. And so I think just taking the time to invest in them and more than just like teaching them the work, but investing in their leadership ability. And we actually walked through a book with the entire management team that kind of distinguished between a manager and a leader. And, one of the biggest things is managers manage processes, but leaders lead people. And I think that the difference in those two things is it sounds small, but it's so big. So I think that's one of the lessons that I've come away with is that I can't do it all. That it's literally impossible. So if I'm not continuing to build the people up that work under me, I'm going to hit a point where I'm going to fail. And at the end of the day, I'm going to take responsibility for the failures, but I'm going to credit the successes to my team. One of the most rewarding things is that I have managers now that are coming to me and they're like, hey, I found this and this is what I did. Or, hey, I worked with this person and now they can do this. And there's nothing more rewarding than listening to their excitement and seeing their development and their growth. But I think that's one of the most important things as a leader in a company is to invest in developing other leaders. And I think, letting go of the control and the power is important too, because if you're trying to hold on to everything, you're going to fail. So just being able to say, okay, you've got this, you've learned this, now go was a huge thing. And one of the things that I've done with my team at New Bedford is, push them to stretch a little bit. So if it was something they were a little uncomfortable with, I would make them do it anyways. And so they all would hate me through the process, but by the end of it, they came out of it stronger and more confident and were able to kind of take over whatever that responsibility was. So I've got account managers who would never have led a client meeting before, leading client meetings with no help. And so it's just little stuff like that where it's important to continue to build their confidence in themselves. And I think, again, recognizing that they're all human, they're going to make mistakes, things are going to go wrong, and giving them the grace that you want them to give yourself, is important. But also recognizing that everybody has different strengths and kind of finding what works best for people allows them to really take off with their, leadership potential.
I can't help, and I'm not going to guess your age, but you are not old, and your leadership wisdom is quite profound. Where does that come from for you to have that kind of awareness of what you're doing and how you're thinking of others and how you're building the business and trust and all of these things this early in your career?
I think part of it is that working with my mom, I got very candid feedback. And so that, of course, caused hard feelings for mother-daughter, but it really helped me to grow. But also working closely with the other partners at the company, they've always been so willing to help us grow, and not just me, but all of the employees at New Bedford that, they've been transparent with their mistakes. They've talked through that. They continue to invest in leadership training. So we've gone through the Franklin Covey series. We've read different books. There's been recommendations for podcasts. So they're as willing to invest in me, which, allowed me to kind of learn that investment into my team. And then, of course, some of it's through trial and error. I've definitely made my fair share of mistakes through the process. But I think one of the things that I've learned is if you take the time to get to know and care about your team as people, then when you mess up, again, they give you that grace back because they know that you genuinely care about their success, and that oftentimes the actions you're taking are to help them grow. So even when we've had to have some really tough conversations, they know that the intent of the conversation is not to knock them down, it's to build them up. You've got to always keep the intentions in mind, what are the intentions of the conversation, or what are the intentions of the action, and make sure that the team knows those intentions as well.
Caity Liggon is an everyday hero whose superpower is her intentionality. Caity knows how to balance the immediacy of getting stuff done with the longer-term investment in developing her people, their skills, and their confidence to do more and be more themselves. She intuitively understands that she doesn't scale, her people don't scale, and the business doesn't scale without intentionally investing in her team every day. If you enjoyed this episode, please check out our other everyday heroes at www.shorecp.university/podcasts or anywhere you get your podcasts. There you will also find our other series, Microcap Moments and Bigger, Stronger, Faster, each exploring the people and the stories that make the microcap space unique. This podcast was produced by Shore Capital Partners, with story and narration by Anderson Williams, recording and editing by Real Audiobooks, sound design, mixing, and mastering by Mark Galloop of Real Audiobooks. Special thanks to Caity Liggon and Jason Farrell. This podcast is the property of Shore Capital Partners, LLC. None of the content herein is investment advice, an offer of investment advisory services, nor a recommendation or offer relating to any security. See the Terms of Use page on the Shore Capital website for other important information.